Welcome to this channel, which is there for those who want to walk with Jesus but aren't part of a church. This is Dchurched. When my mother became pregnant with me, she was very concerned. She was concerned because she'd been taking some tablets that were called thalidomide tablets. Those tablets, when taken in close proximity to pregnancy, caused disabilities in children that were then born. And my mother was scared. So she prayed what she called her Hannah prayer, echoing the story of Hannah in the Old Testament, who prayed for God to give her a child, and that child would be part of God's family and God's service. She prayed that prayer and said, Lord, just make him normal. Well, she got me. Just make him normal, and I'll dedicate him to your service. Well, I was born and I didn't know this story until years later, and she told me that she'd prayed that prayer after I went into church leadership. And I said to my mother, really, Mum, you prayed that prayer? You sealed my destiny before I was born. I could have been a rich banker or something. And instead, I went into Christian ministry. You'd think being born with a story like that would give you a sense of destiny and a sense of purpose, that life would go on in all kinds of wonderful ways under God. But the reality was, of course, I didn't know. And even when I did, I wandered and didn't always achieve those things that I wanted to achieve. I drifted at times. And sometimes we think the Christian journey should be an upward curve, but it's more like the Dow Jones Index. Often I think those who claim absolute certainty actually aren't being real about their doubts, living in a kind of denial. Well, what's your story? This podcast, this channel, is for those who are wanting to continue to walk with Jesus, but can't quite cope with the church at the present time. Maybe you're like Rose, who had hard questions of the faith and didn't find a safe place in the church, to be honest. It just felt disingenuous to remain. Or the person whose hopes for the church were as follows, and I quote, radical hospitality, love, honesty, openness, willingness to be different, disrespect of conventional structures. That's what I expect to see, but it's not the reality. Or maybe you're like Henry, a smart, wisecracking academic with a large intellect and a suspicion of black and white thinking. Henry found it impossible to live in two worlds, one where rigorous thought was valued and the other where sound bites and slogans were what counted. Or maybe you're like the person who very strongly said this, I was thrown out of church for being myself. I think Jesus wants us to tear these oppressive and abusive institutions down. Scrap the church. Wow. Or again, like Jessica, a woman with leadership gifts and skills that were recognized in her workplace, whose skills were not utilized in the local church, and who at times was wounded by the words and actions of people in church leadership, and who left and said, look, if that's what Christians are like, you can stick it. I want to say I'm sorry. It is very hard to keep believing when you don't see evidence for it in the lives of Jesus' followers. Dchurched is about engaging with Jesus even when you don't like the church very much. Maybe you found the church wounding or violating, too political, too otherworldly. Maybe it's been a bit too conforming for your standards. It's not been able to answer questions that you have, and you find yourself having to hide your true self. You like a connection, you'd like a safe context into which to ask your hard questions and explore what it means to follow Jesus. You like Jesus, but you're wary or weary of the church. We want to provide video resources, opportunity for group discussion, Facebook discussion, and opportunity for personal input from the speakers. We've got a whole bunch of themes we're excited about and that we hope will be helpful to you. Things like hanging in there when all the evidence for God has been removed. working through forgiveness, embracing this stage of your faith journey, even if you're not in a local fellowship, thriving in faith, even though you have a sense of living in exile, noticing God in the ordinary things, faith without artificial boundaries, doubt versus unbelief, Jesus versus churchianity, and navigating in the desert place. We want to connect with you and address some of the questions or issues you want to discuss, so we'd love feedback on what those might be. And also want to say you're valuable, you're worth something to God, and we're not trying to force you or sneak you back into a faith community that you've left like some Trojan horse. We want to validate this stage of your faith journey. But I do recognize that we need one another to keep walking. So let's go on a journey together, walking through life with Jesus. So if you're wounded but still walking, or see yourself as an exile, perhaps boldly coloring your faith outside the church walls, we want to affirm that. Welcome to Dchurched.